One of the things I like about myself is I'm very susceptible to epiphany. And I was on a crowded city bus, and I thought to myself, well, what do I really want from life anyway? Like, I had one of those rare opportunities for reflection, and I thought, well, I want to be happy. And I realized I say I want to be happy, but I don't spend any time thinking about, am I happy? Could I be happier? What does a person do to make themselves happier? Is it even possible to make yourself happy? And I thought, I should have a happiness project. And it was like, boom, boom, happiness project. And I ran to the library the next day and got a giant stack of books, science, philosophy, memoirs, novels, research, anything I could get my hands on about the subject. But it was just for me. It was just something that I wanted to know. And this is something that happens to me all the time. I get really interested in a subject and I do a ton of research and writing about it. Like, I went through this thing about color. Like, I was just, now I can't even kind of capture like how obsessed with color I was there for a while. So anyway, this was a very familiar thing. I got a bunch of books, was reading them, taking notes, and then finally it occurred to me, this was when I was finishing my biography of JFK. So it was in that period where I was completely done with my work as a writer, but it hadn't been published yet. And that's sort of it can be kind of a real quiet zone for writers. Not so much now because there's so much other work to do, but at that time. And so I had this open space where I could really just spend a lot of time every day exploring it. And then it just got bigger and bigger. And then I started thinking of things I wanted to try in my own life. Like, I would read the research that would say something like novelty and challenge make people happier, or you should fight this way with your spouse, not this way. And I would be like, oh, I want to try this. I want to try that. And then finally, like, it just seemed so fascinating and it was just getting so big that it occurred to me, well, maybe this should be my next book. And then this whole thing can be part of, like, I can write about my experience of like putting all this stuff to the test. I'll make myself the guinea pig. I'll report on what I learned and what I tried. And then, because I think sometimes we learn best from somebody else's example rather than somebody just suggesting something to do. There had been a lot of research into what's now called positive psychology. And so there was like a lot of research. And I think for a lot of people that grounds them and makes them feel like, okay, well, this isn't just somebody like musing. There's like science behind it. I also think I was very concrete and like, this is exactly what I did. And this is how, and I was very practical. These were things that you could do as part of your ordinary day without spending a lot of time, energy, or money, which for many people is in very short supply. Because often when people write about, seeking happiness, they do something very dramatic, which is really fun to read about. Like, oh, somebody's going to travel the world, or they're going to go on a silent meditation retreat for a year, or whatever. That's fun to read about, but it's not very practical for most people who have their work and their responsibility, and like they're not gonna do something like that. And the thing about me is like, I didn't even want to do something. Even if I could have done something as dramatic as that, that's not my nature. That's not what appeals to me. And I think for a lot of people, that was something that they were looking for, which is just what are the practical little things that I could do as just part of my ordinary routine that might just lift me up. And also one of the things about me, and to be sure, when I was trying to get a book deal for the book, this was a serious criticism of it, and many people thought the book would not succeed because I was just too boring. I was too ordinary. There was nothing interesting about me. I didn't have a big arc. I was pretty happy when I started, and I was pretty happy when I ended. One of my big aims was just to have more gratitude for all the things that I was already happy for and was taking for granted. And so I think a lot of people thought, well, you need to have a big dramatic arc. And I was just like, I just don't have a big dramatic arc. That is not my story. But it turns out for a lot of people, they're pretty happy. Research shows a lot of people are either pretty happy or very happy in their own lives. And so I think that struck a chord with people who didn't really identify with like the big dramatic, messy, huge swings. This was something more like an ordinary person might identify with. I wrote the Happiness Project, and it just turned out that happiness it's such a vast subject. And there's so many kind of different sub themes within happiness that I basically been studying different aspects of happiness ever since. So like, I wrote a book Better Than Before that's all about habit change, because if you're talking to people about their happiness, very often they start to point to difficulties or success in making a habit change. And so that led me down the whole habit route. Now, one of the things as I was writing is over time, I was pushing myself. I kind of noticed, like in hindsight, to write more aphoristically. So, an aphorism is a short statement that's a general insight about human nature that's attributed to a person. So, it's not like a proverb, like when the student is ready, the teacher appears. It's something that a particular person, like Oscar Wilde or Warren Buffett or Dolly Parton, said. And you're like, this is something that's a general interesting observation that kind of sheds light on human experience that somebody actually said. But I realized that I had been pushing myself to write things like it. Like in my books, you'll see lines like the days are long, but the years are short, or accept yourself and also expect more from yourself, or a quest is more fun than a jaunt. And I, because I was pushing myself creatively to try to really crystallize big ideas into kind of one line drop mic observations. And I love aphorisms. Like I have a huge collection of other people's aphorisms. I love reading them and I find them incredibly thought provoking. And because they're so short, they have sort of special power in the mind. You can really think about whether you agree or disagree. A lot of times I disagree with other people's aphorisms. A lot of times people disagree with my aphorisms. That's part of the fun. And so, but then at a certain point, I thought, oh, I started collecting them, other people's and my own, as I was writing them. And then at a certain point, I thought, wow, maybe this could be a fun book. I would love to share the kind of the secrets of adulthood that I've learned with time and experience the hard way in all of my thinking about human nature. And so then I started really kind of in earnest writing these aphorisms, these secrets of adulthood. I mean, this was such an unusual kind of book to write. Because it's just a collection of aphorisms. So it's literally a small book. It's the kind of book that you could pick up and put down and just flip through it and just sort. I've heard of people who like they just pull it out of the at a dinner party or like a bunch of people sitting around a table and they'll just read a couple and then they all discuss them. So it's just these one lines. And so what I did to try to give more order for the reader was to put them into categories, which are the kinds of things that we face as we go through adulthood. And we're like looking for, does anybody have a secret to how to figure this out? Like, help me out. So there are categories like tough decisions, or one big section is managing the complexities of relationships, or like so a lot about sort of like dealing with yourself, like procrastination, making like adventure, like just so it's organized so that if somebody has a particular problem, they could look in the table of contents and see like, oh, is there anything here about making tough decisions? And it's like, yes, there is a chapter called Tough Decisions. Or you can just kind of flip through it, or you can read it straight through. I am the kind of person who will read a book of aphorisms straight through. I'm not sure how common that is. It's funny because when I was talking about the book, people are like, oh, this is great. This is like light, it's digestible, it's very Instagrammable. But the fact is, when you're writing this way or reading this way, it is a very dense. It's like extremely dense. It's more like, and they kind of, you kind of need to think about each one. And so it's actually, I wanted the book to be very short because it packs a big punch per page more than just like a straight narrative, because each line is so crafted to be full of meaning. And you hope, of course, that's in my vanity, that's what I hope that I did.